One of the most prominent progressive Christian writers of the day is Karen Armstrong. And she and many writers within this genre of Christianity says that if you go to all the religions across the world, then there is one thing that all of them have in common, and that is love your neighbor. It's a command that you can find at the grassroots of every religion in this world. And that boils down to what Jesus taught us when he came to this world, when he said there is only the law of one, and the law of one is love. Or, as we also would state it, do no harm. As we've spoken previously, you know that the word from the Aramaic language that we translate as good in the English language, in Aramaic it means to be in harmony with sacred oneness. So the goodness that Jesus spoke about, or what this Aramaic word refers to, links us back to the law of one, because sacred oneness, says the law of one, is to love everybody and everything, and to do no harm towards everybody or anything. We have a lot of fairy tales in our lives. Now, you probably know this one. As little kids, we heard the story of Hansel and Gretel. Even in South Africa, in a total different language, the same story. And through these fairy tales, we grew up to kind of fear witches. You know, when somebody says there's a witch in the woods, you won't go into those woods. You will stay clear. But history showed to us that we should have rather feared the ones that burned those witches than the witches themselves. In that sense, many a religion for us is just a fairy tale, because we do not believe in it. We as Christians believe in the Christian faith. That's why we call ourselves Christians. And all the others are kind of fairy tales. We come in contact with them due to world travel and asylum seekers and refugees and visitors and migrant workers. The world became a small place during this age we live, because suddenly every corner of the world is reachable to everybody. Not only by traveling there, but also by watching your television shows. You see the most exotic places that we probably will never have the privilege to visit, but we are there, in a sense, through our mass media. And so we are there when we see mosques and temples and priests of other faiths. And we think that we know what we are talking about because, of course, we know the Christian faith. And the Christian faith is so much better. You know, it's us. It's only us. It's our story. It's our side of the story. And the question is this morning, did history show us that we are right? That we have this supreme and superior faith and religion? Or what proof do we have to tell us that we have the better faith? We can understand the Christian faith right from the top to the bottom, every word that we speak within this faith, but if it doesn't come down to a lifestyle, it means nothing. And if we go into the world, we create this picture. A picture that tells us something about scarcity. There's not enough. There's not enough water. There's not enough food. There's not enough land. There's not enough whatever is important to you, and therefore we gather. And those who gather the most are the ones in power, let alone the money of this world. You know, if you can gather all the money, you are in power because you have all the money. So the most powerful corporations and institutions in this day and age are those who have all the money. I don't need to give you proof of that, you know that. They rule this world through mass media because they control it. They tell us what we need to think and believe because they have the mass media in their hands. And they do what they are told to do because money talks in the end of the day. So that's the way we live. And it's nothing strange, it's nothing new. The Roman Catholic Church is in the powerful position that they've been in for many years due to money. They have all the money. They control a lot of corporations in this world. You can go on Google and you can see the list where they have interests in money. This is the institution from which we originate from, the church, that was supposed to bring a word of compassion and love and a word of empathy and a word of let's share everything, that became the strongest and the most powerful due to their power and might by controlling the politics and the money. Jesus is called the Nazarene, not because he comes from Nazareth, but because he was part of the group of Nazarenes, which is also called the Essenes in that time and day when Jesus lived in Palestine. Now, as you know by now, the Essenes lived in a village called Qumran, between Jerusalem and the Dead Sea, in an area that was called the wilderness, because it was a wild area, still is today. John the Baptist was called the voice of the wilderness, or in the wilderness, and he was a leading figure within the Essene group. That's why he baptized, because the Essenes used the baptism to bring people into their community, to baptize them into this Essene group. Same way we use baptism to welcome newborns into the community of faith of the religion we belong to, which is Christianity. The Nazarenes lived in the foothills of the Mount Carmel, which is close to modern-day city Haifa in Israel. And there they practiced these Essene or Nazarene teachings. And one of the important teachings of the day was to bring everything you have into a community and into communion with each other. So there will not be rich people and poor people. We are all the same. We gather around the same trough and we eat the same food. So that is the thinking that there was in that day from these Essenes or Nazarenes where Jesus grew up, being Jesus the Nazarene. And that he taught. He taught us to share, to come in communion like we do today across the world. And he taught us to be of service to each other. And the next picture you will recognize immediately, where he demonstrated this. Jesus washing the feet of the disciples. And if you count the disciples, I must admit I had to count 2 or 3 times before I saw the 12th one, which is kind of obscure in this picture, but all 12 of them are there. So Jesus in this picture washed the feet of his disciples, demonstrating how they as Nazarenes lived. They served each other. They shared what they have. They were not a rich and a poor. They were all in the same boat. He was also ready to wash the feet of Judas, the one that he knew would betray him, the one that would deliver him. Now the question immediately comes up, are we prepared to wash the feet of those that seem to be our enemies? So a Christian group back in the year 2007 did a test to test this question, or to get the answer of this question. And they created a big mural that they put up in different malls across North America. And it looked like this. Jesus washing the feet of the then leaders of the world. And who's sitting there in the middle? Osama bin Laden. It is shortly after the 9/11 events in New York and Washington. And this radical Christianity, this radical Jesus washed the feet of all the leaders of the world. And what was the reaction to this picture in the malls? Hate phone calls, hate letters, letters of fear and threatening to burn down malls if you don't take down that poster. And who reacted in that way? Christians. Not Muslims, not people of other faith, Hindu or Sikh or whatever it may be. Christians. Christians said the message from Jesus, where he washed the feet of all the disciples, including Judas Iscariot, is too radical for us. We cannot go with that. Take down the posters or we will burn. So that's the question. Is Jesus too radical for you? Is his message too radical for your life? To live it? To be true to it? Or is it easier just to fall in and go the way the world lives? So the disciples challenged Jesus the one day and they said to him, how many times do we need to forgive? How many times do we need to forgive Osama bin Laden if he was guilty of what he was accused of? Jesus said, not 7 times, 7 times 70. Now, if my math is correct, I think that's 490. So if you get to number 490, forgiving the same person because of the same thing that that person is doing to you, will we be able to do that forgiveness? That's the question. And when Jesus gave these kind of answers, wash the feet of your enemies, forgive 7 times 70, the disciples just go like, oh no, this is too much. Just give us more faith. Because faith will drag us through all these commandments that you give us that we obviously cannot follow. And then we have this passage which we read together this morning where they asked for more faith. And Jesus said, if you but have the faith of a mustard seed, you will tell this sycamore tree or this Canadian maple tree outside the church to uproot itself and plant itself in Lake Ontario just down the road. That is what you will be able to do. And that's not what I say. That is what Jesus says, who we follow as Christians. The mustard tree is quite kind of a complex plant in the Palestine area. It is a weed, and it's an unwelcoming weed. Because what happened is the birds eat the mustard seeds, and because the mustard seeds are small and don't digest easily in the bird's stomach, they pass those seeds out, and everywhere they do that, the mustard trees start growing. So if you were a farmer or had corn on the fields, or you had animals grazing the fields, which is scarce because there's not a lot of grazing. It's not Ontario with all the rain we get here. It's a dry, arid area, so the grazing is very scarce. And now you have these mustard trees coming up all over the place, dragging out all the water from the soil, and the other plants can't grow. So it's a really unwelcoming weed, and it spreads like wildfire. And now Jesus came and he said that this is the way that your faith should be. Your faith should be like this mustard seed, growing wild, largely uncontrollable. That's the way that your faith should be, says Jesus. And the moment you are in that situation, what will follow? You will be able to tell the maple tree to uproot and plant itself in Lake Ontario. That's the promise. Now, if I ask you this morning, is that your faith? Let's go outside and we do a test. There's a beautiful maple tree just outside the church. And we see who of us can first uproot it and put it down in the lake. Now, you all would think that's now really silly, But isn't that what this boils down to? When Jesus said, if you only had the faith of a mustard seed, you would be able to do that. C.S. Lewis, a very well-known author in the English world, said, I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen. Not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. I want to read that again. I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen. Not only because I see it, the sun rising, but because by the sun rising, I see everything else. So C.S. Lewis says, that is the way Christian faith works. It's not about the faith. It's about everything else I see due to my faith. It's about the new way I look out due to this faith. It's like a window. Did you know that there is an instrument that we can look through a wall? We call it a window. It's marvelous. It's magic. You put it in the wall and you can see right through the wall. It's not about the window that gives us this magic of looking through a wall. It is what do we see on the other side? A beautiful picture of the world out there. That's why we put windows in our houses and sanctuaries, so that the light can come in and that we can see outside. If we focus on the window and say, oh, it's not big enough, or oh, it's dirty, or we miss the point. Because the window gives us the ability to see and to have this light. And this is what C.S. Lewis says faith is doing to us. We always try and seek for more faith. We all pray for that. God, just give me the faith. God, just help me to go through this day keeping my faith. We have this fear in us of losing our faith, of being kind of lost because we lost our faith. And many people kind of did lose their faith. But Jesus says, that's not the thing. The thing is, what does your life look like due to your faith? Even if it's as small as a mustard seed. Don't focus on the mustard seed, which is wild and out of control, but focus on what that faith in your life brings about. And that brings us back to the poster in North American malls, where Jesus kneeled down on the poster, washing the feet of Osama bin Laden. Are you prepared to kneel down and wash the feet of Putin? Are you prepared to wash the feet of the political party's leader which you do not believe in or do not follow? The Minister of Finance? Do you catch the drift of the story of Jesus? Are we prepared to live our faith? To be the communal gathering like the Nazarenes were, where we share everything, but above all, the one law, the law of one, through love, where we love everybody. You can bring change to a person by loving that person so much that the only reaction that person can have is to start loving back. That is the way it works, because love always wins. Ernest Hemingway said, "There is nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self." This is what faith is doing to us. It creates a former self and a new self. And what does that new self look like? Jesus comes with stories in the New Testament and we want to go, yes, that's it. I saw a very interesting YouTube video this week of a pastor preaching about how those who do not confess Jesus are going to hell and they're going to burn and they're going to, be eaten by the worm. He really went with this, really big words. You're going to burn. They're going to suffer. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be hot. Just imagine that hot fire. And what happened? The Christian crowd in that church applauded and said, yes, let them burn. Is that what Christianity is about? Or is Christianity about Jesus that washed the feet of Judas Iscariot? About Jesus washing the feet of your biggest enemy? About love. And if you have love, you will tell the sycamore tree outside to uproot and plant itself in the lake down the road. That will be your new self. Amen.